Hi, friends. Today we're going to talk about this piece called Egypt that I wanted to share of our Autistic Expressionism because the color palette is something different from the colors that I normally use. I usually use a lot of bright colors. I'm not usually a browns and golds fan, but I'll get to that in a little bit. So, a little story, background about doing this piece. Traditionally, and well into my 20s, I always thought of Christmas colors as red, green, and gold. And in 2012, we moved to California. My husband had a training course to do for 6 months. So we were living in New York at the time. We put most of our stuff in storage in New York, and just took a bare minimum since we didn't know where we were going to go after. Then they would just transport our furniture and stuff to the next location. Well, all of my Christmas decorations were in storage. And so at the end of the 6 months, it was like September, October timeframe, Christmas was coming, and I had no Christmas decorations. So I couldn't go without celebrating because if you watch my last video, you know that Christmas is really important to me for family and love, but also Jesus and the hope that he brings. And so I wasn't about to not celebrate Christmas. And so we opted to go to Michael's and we purchased a little fake pine tree in a pot that we put our gifts under. And then also I bought some navy blue and white sparkly yarn that I crocheted lacy kind of garland for the tree. And I got some fake white poinsettias and silver snowflakes to decorate it. It was really pretty, but adding the white and blue and silver into my Christmas repertoire of colors really expanded my horizons a bit. And it's become kind of, I'm not so adamant about what I used to think were Christmas colors. I was very adamant for a long time. And I'm still not a huge fan of like pinks and purples and yellows and oranges, but whatever, it doesn't really matter at this point. So on the day that I sat down to do this art, it was 2 days before last Christmas, and I began reminiscing about my decor over the past Christmases, like what I just shared with you. And I was staring at my Christmas tree, because I can see it very easily from my studio space. And it's all decked out in red and black plaid. But as I was looking at it, I saw this carved little nativity scene that I just got when I was on a trip a couple months before. It started me thinking about the desert and the night sky, and I've used dark blue fairly often in night skies over the last few years in some of my paintings, and it can really pack a punch, and so I decided to use it. Midnight blue was my favorite color as a kid when we had the big Crayola pack. I don't know if it was 64 or 128 colors, had the little crayon sharpener in the back, but I remember of all of those colors, I loved midnight blue the best, and so that was my first color choice for the palette because of the night sky. When I started watercoloring a few years ago, I created my first watercolor palette with Winsor and Newton and Grumbacher paints, and those were based on an instructor's preference for lessons I was taking at the time. And I still like that palette, but now I rarely pull it out because my favorite paints have become Daniel Smith watercolors. I have a cool palette and a warm palette, two palettes that I've put together. And that's my like normal or regular palette that I prefer to use for whatever I'm doing. Although that was for a long time, but now I've gotten a third palette and I've gotten even more palettes, and then I've bought all these other sets. I've become kind of a watercolor hoarder, but that's beside the point. So I pulled the midnight blue from my cool palette, and then I was looking at my warm palette, and I thought I have all these browns and golds that are granulating colors, so now's a good time to use them for the desert, right? And so I went ahead and started creating my spaces with my circle template and my ruler like I do. Just paying attention, to have the odd number of circular objects and make sure they're kind of balanced around the page. And I can't say that I was having any particular emotions that needed to be processed that day, but my mind is almost always going 100 miles an hour. I think that morning I was more concerned about just getting into the studio and having my regular art time, because I was really trying to protect it for my own mindset, making sure that I get in the studio every day, because I really wanted to become a better artist, and I really wanted to develop that habit. And I have since then. This was a few months ago. But so once I decided on the palette and I got the spaces going, then I turned on my Christmas music and I started painting, and my mind reverted back to the nativity scene ornament, and I was starting to think about other nativity sets that I've bought, because I've got kind of a few that I've collected over the years. But then thinking about those led to me thinking about the Christmas story with Mary and Joseph, and I kind of had this vision of them walking with the donkey on their way to Bethlehem for the Roman census. And then intermixed with that, as these flashes of things are, as I'm arting, flashes of images are going through my mind, memories and the Christmas story, and then the little drummer boy too, walking across a desert sand hill with a night sky in the background. So I started the piece with my normal dots and lines, and then I began to add stars to the night sky. This is all, going around in my head at the same time. And then I thought about the North Star and the Magi, and then I started making the desert fronds and wheat type plants for another story of a different Joseph. He was in Egypt, and they had a famine that he had kept back wheat for. It was a story of 7 years of feast and 7 years of famine. And that was in Egypt too. And then as I'm thinking about that story in Egypt, I made that flashed into the water. And so I made some scales for fish, and I made some waves for water for the Nile. And just kind of kept going. And as every time I created a new pattern, a rampant thought shut down, as they do, and I just got calmer. And not that I wasn't angsty or anxious or anything before I started it, but I don't know, it's so weird, because I'm not a Brown and Golds fan, but this painting really makes me feel hopeful, happy, calm. And then I used white pen, and then I added a gold pen to give it kind of a festive touch. So I don't know if you can really see on the images in the video, but there's gold markings all around it. When I got finished, I loved it. The granulation of these paints. So in the palette, they all kind of look like browns and gold. They're kind of varying hues. There's only maybe 6 or 7 colors I have all in a row there. But I love the granulation is it feels like there's several colors in one paint. And then here, I used this base color, and I did stripes with this color, and they just coordinated so well. It turned out a lot better than I expected it to when I started. And as I imagined it would. The midnight blue as an accent color really, really hit the spot just right for me. So even though the piece is not a conventional piece, I really loved it. And processing the Christmas memories and contemplating the time 2,000 years ago of the Jesus birth story, it made me just feel really calm and content and full of love. And I just really hope that you enjoy the piece as much as I do. And I appreciate you watching my video. And if you like the video, I'd love it if you'd like it and subscribe and share it if you think anyone else might like it. I like talking about my art. I like telling some stories. I hope you like it too. Bye.